I worked part-time as a DoorDash delivery driver at clothing store. But on certain days, I wouldn't actually make more money doing deliveries to more people, ordering on special days. So on those days, I spent most of the nights delivering around. Doing this for almost 6 months. At the time, I had gone very familiar with it, and it was kind of just second nature to make things better. My town already had a traffic even during rush hour. Always, it was a regular night delivering, and I had just picked up a large order from a fancy restaurant and began making my way to the customer's house. Big expensive orders are always the best ones to do. This order pay more and really didn't make any extra effort compared to the other deliveries, so it kind of just felt like a bonus. I put into the neighborhood of large homes, which made sense considering the size of the order in the fancy restaurant. It was very foresty area, with most of the houses hidden behind a long driveway that went into the trees. The customer's house wasn't too far into the neighborhood, thought I was only a couple minutes down the road. Usually I'd park on the side of the street and wait and walk up to the front door. But with a driveway like this, I wouldn't obviously just go down them to get close to the house. We're so far away, but as soon as I turned into a driveway, I slammed on my brakes. There is a chain helped by 2 pillars on either side of a driveway blocking the entrance. I didn't see this before, but I'd rather ever see the chain actually connected. I figured they're just forgetting to undo it, so I got out of my car and made my way over to the pillar on the right side. I immediately noted there was a lock on it, required a key, preventing me from just removing it. I stood there annoyed and looked down the driveway, but I couldn't even see the house from there. I went back to my car and grabbed my phone to call the customer. The man answered after first ring, and I expected that. I was their DoorDash driver and that the chain was blocking the entrance to the driveway. He responded saying there was an easy way to unlock it right now, but the house isn't very far down, so I shouldn't have to walk very far. I pretended to be nice and said okay and hung up. Typical rich family, I whispered to myself as I reached into the passenger set to grab a large bag of food. I made sure to lock my car, then walked around the chain and down the path. But a minute into the walk, I started getting a little nervous. It was really dark and they didn't have any lights on the side of their driveway. I still wasn't able to see the house. It was strange since they had told me that it wasn't a long walk. Then I heard crunching footsteps coming from the dark trees to the left of me. I stopped and stared at the direction they were coming from. As they came closer and closer, I began to walk. A figure of a man holding his hand up as if to say hello. "Who are you?" I asked, trying to hide my shaky voice. The man joined me on the driveway and explained that he was the one just talked to the phone. It was still uncomfortable, and asking what he was doing, he took a step forward, then began saying that the driveway took a sharp turn up ahead and it was actually a shortcut to go through the trees, so he figured he'd meet me halfway since it was a long walk for me. I found this whole situation to be really strange, and he had said on the phone that it was a short walk, but now he was admitting that it was a long. It just didn't add up. The man stood a few feet away from me and held his hand out for the bag. Hesitating, stepped towards him and handed him the food. He talked to me. He thanked me and turned around the head back the way he came, but then he stopped, turned to face me again. "I forgot to bring your cash tip," he said, looking me in the eyes. Something about the way he said it made me extremely uncomfortable, so I said, "Don't worry about it," and started walking back down the driveway to my car. "It's just a quick walk through here. If you want to come with me, I can drop you back to your car once I give you your tip." I I didn't respond and began to walk faster down the dark driveway. A few seconds later, I heard leaves crashing as the man walked back into the trees. I was just glad he didn't try to follow me. Once I got back to my car, I drove off quickly and ended my deliveries for the night. When I made it home, I reported it to the police just in case, and the operator said they would send an officer down to talk to the owners of the house. I still get chills thinking about the whole situation because I got a call a couple hours later from an officer explaining that he talking to the resident living in the house, but they had no idea what he was talking about as they didn't order anything for delivery. I don't know if the residents were lying or not, but either way, disturbing experience and has made me a lot of cautious doing deliveries at night. It was a regular night of delivering pizza around my town, and I was in the middle of heading to probably my 8th or 9th customer of the night. I typically just play music and kind of space out as I drive between the houses and the restaurant, as it can get really boring after a while. But as I made my way down the dark empty road, I noticed a couple of warning lights on my dashboard suddenly turn on. It was a little worrying, but they weren't anything important, so I continued on. My car was pretty old and had a lot of miles on it, but for the most part it did well, so I figured it must just be a false alarm or something. Unfortunately, thought as I continued down the road, more and more warning lights began to turn on. Before the checking engines lights flashed and eventually my car stopped. I never had a car breakdown on me before, so I honestly wasn't too sure what to do. The first thing I did was to try and turn it back on again, but it was completely dead. I looked around and noticed it was pretty far from anywhere useful. I knew what I was. I drive down this road many times before, but the nearest place that could be open at this time was a gas station that it was about a half-mile away. So I called my customer and let them know about my situation, and then I called my work and let them know as well. My manager basically said to not worry about delivering the pizza and to just figuring out my car situation and then head home for the night. That actually gave me a bit of relief, knowing that I didn't have to worry about work anymore, but I still wasn't really sure what to do. So I ended up calling my brother, who lived about 14 minutes away, but he was the only person that I knew would still be awake at this time. He picked up and immediately asked me what was going on. I told him about my situation, and he let out a big sign, and he said he would come and pick me up and drop me off at home. I told him exactly where I was and thanked him, then sat back in my car, relieved that I was able to get some help. After a few moments of waiting, I opened up the box of pizza and took a couple of bites, figuring it would be a waste if I didn't help myself to it. It was actually really dark in the car since the battery was dead, so I had my phone light on and laid it on the center console so that I could see a bit better. But after about 15 minutes of waiting, I saw a figure appearing from down the road, walking towards my car. I felt pretty vulnerable in my position, so I turned my phone light off and hoped that when they passed by, they wouldn't even notice that I was in there. Once they got a few feet from my car, they slowed down and began looking at my car. They were inspecting it or something else. When the man came up to my window, knocked as if he wanted me to roll it down. Of course, I wasn't able to, so I loudly spoke, telling him that I couldn't. He looked offended and responded asking me for a lift to the gas station down the road. This was when I started a strange feeling about this guy, as I felt like it was pretty obvious that my car had broke down, so I knew he had to be up to something. I didn't respond and kind of just sat there watching the guy, hoping that he would go away. He continued asking for help, getting more and more aggressive about it. Then he went silent for a moment before suddenly grabbing the door handle, shaking the whole car as if he tried to open the door. I began panicking, unsure of what to do, so I looked around for something to defend myself with, but all I could find was a small screwdriver in my car. At this point, the man started stabbing the window with a small knife as he were trying to break it. He made a few large scratches on it before being to the edge of the window to forcefully pushing it down. I was yelling at him and screaming for help, but I knew my efforts would go unheard. He continued for over a minute with pure anger in his eyes as he tried everything to get in, but he stopped. I stood there for a moment, silent, and breathed heavily. He pushed his face against the window and stared at me with rage and disgust, then smashed his face into the door one last time before running back down the road into the darkness. When my brother arrived, I showed him the scratches on my door, and we left in hurry, calling the police on the way to my home. I've never feared on my life as much as I did on that road, but one thing I can't get off my mind ever since that, looking in the man's eyes as he stared at me through the window, I felt as eager to perform a horrible attack on me as I sat there alone and helpless.